Yes, sir.
Okay, I'll call this meeting to order at 2:04 p.m. So introductions and roll call. JJ, can you go through the roll call?
Yes, sir. Marsha Porter-Norton.
Present.
Kevin Hall.
Present.
Gilda Yazzie.
Here.
And filling in for Eva Henson, Mike French. Here. Kathleen Sickles.
She's coming, she's fine.
I'll call her name again in a second. Brenna Moreland.
Yes, present.
Mark Garcia.
Here.
Clark Craig. Present. Patrick Vaughn.
Here.
And once Katie gets here, we will have a full board.
Great. Regardless, we have a quorum, so let's go ahead. Next item is public comment. It's like we have no members locally is here. Yes, sir. Okay, well, Kevin, go ahead and then
3
I'll.
minutes, right? You know, since we last sat together, obviously a change in the loss of Eva and her resignation from the city. I don't know anything more than what I learned from the Herald. So I thought it was important to say a few words only because Eva came on staff when I was the community development director. And you know, clearly she did a lot of good things in her time with me. But what I wanted to read into the record is a letter that was written to the Herald from Dan Armentano, who was also on my staff at the time. And I think it represents well of the kind of synthesizing maybe my feelings anyways. And I'm not asking anyone else to take any positions in that regard, but this is what Dan Armentano wrote. Henson, an exceptional public servant. City of Durango is lucky to employ many exceptional individuals. Unfortunately, one of their best has resigned. Former housing innovation manager Eva Henson's accomplishments during her brief 2.5-year tenure were remarkable. Henson, as the first employee of the newly created housing division, was tasked with building a program to promote housing opportunities for Durango's workforce. The housing crisis, recognized nationally as a wicked problem, requires innovative and evolving methods to address a complex issue with multiple variables. As Henson's co-worker for more than 2 years, and again, this is Dan's words, I witnessed her successfully implement creative approaches to build partnerships, deploy funding, and pioneer new programs benefiting city residents. Her long-lasting contributions include, but are not limited to, playing a critical role in securing funding and partners for the residents at Durango Motel Conversion Project, 120 units, overhauling the city's fair share inclusionary zoning ordinance, leveraging public-private partnerships to initiate workforce housing development at Durango Crossings and Twin Buttes, creating leasing for locals and ADUs for locals programs. Given the scope of the purported transgression and the lack of a smoking gun, as reported by the Durango Herald, Henson's resignation over failure to disclose some conflict of interest is a very unfortunate outcome. The community should recognize Henson as an exceptional public servant whose tireless efforts set the bar for future actions to address housing needs. Allowing the circumstances of her departure to tarnish her character and her legacy would be a travesty. Again, Dan Armentano. So again, I don't know the backstory on any of this, but you know, my view of Eva while she was with us and with the city really is represented here. And I just thought it was important to acknowledge that as a member of this board. It will be a loss to the board. And as to why this all played out the way it did, maybe we'll never know. And I guess that's the way it goes.
Thank you, Kevin. I do really appreciate that.
And Pat, I'd like to add too, since I was Kevin's assistant director when we hired Eva, that I would echo exactly what Dan said about Eva. So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you, Nicole. Appreciate it.
That's what makes mistakes.
Yes, go ahead.
I'd like to say something, Gilda Yazzie from the city of Durango. I really learned a lot from you that I recognize that letter too. I was highly disappointed this situation developed the way it did in the outcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to give public comment as well. I couldn't have said it any better than Dan did, and Councilor Yazzie, thank you for saying that. Eva is an extraordinary person. And I remember her being in so many meetings where she would get passionate and a little teary at times. And it's because she cared so deeply. I remember in one of the summits we had a person that was, I think, getting pretty teared up about the lack of housing in our community, and Eva handled that individual with such grace and such diplomacy, and it was because she shared the passion that we all have for housing. I didn't have time to get a card, but I'm gonna pass a notebook around. If you wanna write a note to her, I will get a card from the RHA with just a message that we thank you and appreciate all that you did. So sorry, it's not a little bit more formal, but I'll put it in a nice card for her, so.
Thank you. Any other comment from? Hearing none, any public comment, besides Nicole? Hearing none, I'll kind of end it the way I usually end things. It's kind of blunt. I used to joke that one of my daughters, both of the daughters, had their GSD degree. They get shit done. But even she got shit done. And that's so hard to find in this world, especially in public office, or not public office, but public staff. And there's no strike against public staff. It's just really hard to navigate. If she got shit done, and I'll leave it at that. I think it's a travesty that she's. So with that, we'll go on. I'll close the public comment section. Approval of the agenda. Are there any changes or modifications or deletions to the agenda? Mark.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to discuss land trust briefly. I know it's not on the agenda, but I'd like to just bring it back up in front of the board at some point, not under decision items, obviously, but maybe under discussion and updates, or I could do it under my Ignacio report. But I'd like to chat a little bit about land trusts.
I would prefer to do it under discussion updates because I don't think it's exclusive to Ignacio.
So add that number 4 to the agenda. That'd be my favorite.
So do I have a motion, or are there any other changes? So do I have a motion to approve the agenda as modified? So moved. So second.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Next item is the approval consent agenda consisting of the June 2024 minutes and the June 2024 financial statements. Are there any edits or changes to either? Yes.
Any small edits that I'd like to see, or at least propose. At the bottom of 5, letter of support. The final sentence says Vice Chair Porter-Norton and Director Hall will join the meeting at 3:55. Just strike and Director Hall because I left the meeting at that point for another meeting, so I didn't come back in. And then under member updates is the last sentence. It was also stated that Elevation Land Trust paid off their loan to Plata County for West Side Triangle. That's accurate, but I think that we could probably wordsmith that a little bit in that they paid off their loan to La Plata County. It should be from La Plata County, in my perspective. So I know it's nitpicky. That's it.
They also should say May 2004 for the minutes and the financial statements. Got a little ahead of myself. So that would be my only.
So with those edits, any other edits, changes? I have a motion to approve it as modified.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Seconded. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Passes unanimously. Thank you. Do we have any public presentations? No. Okay. Alliance updates. Program Director report. Sarah Tober.
Hey, everyone, good to see you
Sarah,
today.
could you speak up just a
Yes.
little bit?
Yes, I will speak up.
Thank you.
Yes, I thank you for being here today. I appreciate it. Here we go. The program director report includes updates around the Catalyst Fund, which actually Sarah has all the data around as well on our side. Obviously, we've had a transition of executive director role, and also would like to introduce Louise Snodgrass. A lot of you already know them around the community. Louise is helping us specifically on marketing communications and for our upcoming Alliance Summit. So it's nice to have that added help. It will also be helping with the RHA branding as well and updating of the website. So we'll be incorporating that into our work as well. So we will need to make a modification on our Bank of Colorado signature card. So we will need to include that in our next board meeting to have a resolution around that, since currently we have Mike French, myself, we have Marsha, and we have Pat and Mark as the signers. So we'll need some directive from the board on how we want to modify that, given that Mike is not representing on the Alliance side anymore. We had us representing because we are managing the Catalyst Revolving Loan Fund. And you all can make any other decisions that you want on that if you want additional staff, but our recommendation is just to take Mike off of it, and there are any other board members that you want as a signer. Otherwise, that would just be the modification that staff is recommending to you all. We'll talk about the Catalyst Fund Revolving Loan Fund in just a second. We are going to be integrating positive pay into our account at Bank of Colorado for extra security. And then I do want to bring up that Commissioner Norton asked about the facilitated board retreat for the end of this year. That would be outside of the scope of work that we would be able to provide the board at this time. We can, however, make some recommendations on some folks to facilitate a board retreat, and or we can use one of the consultants under the capacity building grant even for a facilitated board retreat. It may behoove the board to consider an executive session to discuss some of these items. It may not need a full board retreat. I've had several conversations with board members now around the capacity of the Economic Development Alliance and where we are currently today in terms of staff power for the RHA. And as we've talked about a potential land trust or something like that, it's just even more important to bring up a potential dedicated staff member for the RHA. There are some community members like Lisa Bloomquist Palmer who are back that might be of interest to the RHA board. There's the potential that Project Moxie could expand their capacity with the RHA board, or there is the, on the Alliance side, we are bringing in a finance and business director onto staff. So we will have, a full team for the RHA, but there would have to be an understanding by the board that I may not always be able to direct these meetings from the staff side, given that I have a board of my own and also a monthly member meeting. I am pulled in a few directions. So I just want the RHA board to think about it and determine what their thoughts are moving forward. Mike had brought up at the last meeting the concept of a dedicated staff that's umbrellaed under the Alliance. Obviously, Sarah spends a majority of her time on housing as the housing program manager on our side, and that includes the RHA and that includes our Catalyst Fund. So we just need to have some more conversations around that before we get into the new year and as budgets are being planned for next year. So.
Yeah, maybe we need to have a discussion about, there's a part of me that says maybe we just need a 2-hour meeting just to talk, because we have good plans in place. We don't, I feel like when we did the strategic plan last year, I lose track of time, I'm sorry, but you know, we really kind of didn't know how things were gonna line out, and I don't know, what do people, what would anybody wanna get out? I mean, I think strategic planning every year is good, but given what you just said and tight timelines and capacity and we have, I mean, every time we open our packet, we see that things are getting done, so how do people feel? What do we want? What do we need?
So this is just my take on it, is that I think the strategic plan can be updated, but I really kind of think seeing what the organization looks like. I'm kind of a visual person, would like to see what the organizational chart will look like. Who's assigned to who, you know, sometimes I'm not really too sure who I should contact at the RHA, not sure, you know, to cross that boundary, if you wanna call it. So I think it'd be just good to see what you think would be successful. Org chart, if you wanna call it that, and then how the RHA would fit into that.
Yeah, and the last board meeting, I did include an org chart in your packet that was for the Alliance, but I'm happy to provide one in our next meeting. So that you can see like who the primary point of contact is for the RHA, which is, it is and will be Sarah Schwartz. And then for any kind of, you know, the larger plan and directive typically comes from me and then the board
How the RHA fits in that.
into it.
To add on to that, I think having not only the org chart, but kind of what tasks are assigned to those particular individuals be helpful to the board for, you know, pure contact reasons, and then you know, your recommendations on a dedicated staff person and what does that mean to budget for the RHA going forward, because every entity is gonna have to share this. It's coming up really quick, right? In terms of the budget process.
Yeah.
So it's kind of has to happen.
I just reiterate what Pat said. I mean, literally our department budgets are due tomorrow. So it's in theory, we should have a number very soon. I mean, we don't have to have this one figured out tomorrow, but I think from a standpoint of where we want to go with staffing, notwithstanding the excellent work, everybody who's working for the RHA, because we all appreciate everybody's efforts. I think it's important that this board probably discusses where we go from here, and it doesn't feel like that's a public meeting. It doesn't feel like it'd be one where we put any of you on the spot and put in any uncomfortable situation. But I think we need to have the conversation about where we go and whether it's feasible and what kind of resources we bring to bear. I know last year or this year's budget, at least for the county, we over budgeted what was necessary. And if you remember that conversation about what level the IJ may need adjusting to change that level, I don't know what the capacity of the other organizations are to bump the number, whether we want to, any of those things. Those really need to happen pretty quickly in order for us to slot that in. Obviously, the county's budget doesn't really adopt until in December. Yeah, so I mean, there's always time for some adjustments, but it sure makes life easier when we have a general magnitude number slotted in as early as possible. You know, we're going to talk about that a little bit.
Yes, decision item number 1.
Do we have money to hire a facilitator in the budget? I mean, just extra money. I mean, I know we don't have like extra money, but discretionary or
Not in the budget, we would have to tap the capacity building grant.
technical assistance. Okay.
And there is money in that grant.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
I agree with the offline conversation. When the board does sit down, I think it's good to start with a 5-year, 3-year, because often we think about what happens next year, but not necessarily longer term. So if we think about where the RHA wants to be, maybe 5 years is too long, 3 years. Because 36 months comes and goes pretty quickly, right?
That's right.
So if we think about it in terms of 12 quarters or however we do that, we work our way backwards. What resources we need short term, but also what are we trying to go to? That might be a healthy conversation.
With this, sorry.
Is the board open to having a separate discussion meeting to discuss this, and we could probably do a Zoom or whatever to work everybody's schedule in.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just agreeing.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah. As do I, but I'm wondering if staff could organize that offline meeting, but
Yes.
just not be in attendance, so we make sure if it's an executive session or whether it's not an executive session, but we just follow procedures accordingly.
Yes, yeah, we can do that.
Well, the sooner the better, probably. So, and I know it's middle of summer, people have travel plans or whatever, but you know, I think majority of us do need to get our heads together.
That is all I have to report on.
You need a motion on the signature changes.
Yes, we will.
I would like to make a motion to support staff's recommendation for changes to the bank signatures.
Your second.
Second.
In the discussion, can we clarify that we're just removing Mike from it?
Just removing Mike French.
That's my understanding. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Thanks, Mark, appreciate it.
Welcome.
Number 2, Catalyst Fund updates, Sarah Schwartz.
Right, so I have met with 2 of the 3 recipients of the Catalyst Fund to go over their contracts, agreements, and the projects as a whole. I'll be meeting with Animus next week. But once we get the agreement signed, back, we'll be issuing checks in the next week or 2. So everything is on track. Developed a new expenditure report form. So we'll be able to provide a little bit more detail of how funds have been used, what projects still have funds left. And
It's page 16 in your packet is the Catalyst Fund overview.
And so we will be looking to do our next round in August, September. Everything to start again in October. Working on a quarterly kind of schedule since we are requiring quarterly expenditure reports. I figured it would be easiest to start these on a quarterly basis. It gives us time in between each one to evaluate. Be implementing the couple changes to the new application as far as the pre-development budgets that Project Moxie gave us.
As well as the rubric in ensuring that any projects that come to us again for Catalyst Fund has already expended their last round. Had a couple of reoccurring ones now. So we're gonna be adjusting that rubric as well. I do want to point out how excited we are about the grand total there. That we've been able to impact 464 below market units here in La Plata County, and that we distributed $383,000. So it's
And
very-
Sarah, 383 out of what's the total?
out of 600 and, oh, I'm sorry, the total is not there.
Grand total of requests is 600 and, but the grand.
Yeah, but the grand total of the fund is 950,000.
I just want to remind the board that that's ARPA money. Once that runs out, it runs out. Right?
Yeah.
So it's not a revolving loan fund like the next topic. And that kind of backs up the whole idea of some sort of sustainable funding source. Because when it's gone, it's gone. And so, yeah, we may have affected 400 units, or maybe by the end of it, we may have fortunate affected 1,000 units. But that's where it ends. So, we need to find something here. So this is making a difference in my opinion.
So just a clarification question for Rock Creek on round 1, you have units to be built as 202. So just, I don't think that's the correct number.
No, and it's weird because I update it every time and then for some reason it keeps going back to that, so.
Thank you for pointing that out.
What is our number, Mark?
They're both 46.
Excuse me, what was it? 46?
Question, Chair?
Yes.
I just need my memory refreshed. Which one is the Rivergate project?
Which one?
Rivergate that did not receive.
No,
funding,
it's in
Rivergate that did
round
receive.
1 and then round 3, so it's Rivergate 71 units, and I think that's in the city, but which project is that?
Yeah, that's Dale Naylor's project.
Oh, okay.
At the railroad.
Oh, okay.
Cundiff Park across the river. On the other side of the existing development.
Okay.
Cundiff Homes.
Anything else on the Catalyst Fund updates?
That is all I have.
Questions? None. Revolving loan fund update, Sarah Tober.
Okay, we have a very strong committee now. We have Pat Bond on it, myself, as well as Jason Schwartz from Bank of Colorado. We have Jameson Bobbin. And we also have now Brian Rose from Region 9. And Region 9 is lending some capacity help for this, which is much needed because through this process, we've discovered how far away we are from actually being a true lender and how much compliance we need in place. So as we were so excited to get back and make distributions in the spirit of the Catalyst Fund, the banker said, slow your roll. We've got to figure out liens. We've got to figure out monitoring. And then we also needed a better set of loan documents. So, and then we also have the added layer of fun that our lawyer for the RHA, David Lieberman, happens to be some of the municipalities' lawyer as well, one of which is being awarded the first loan. So we brought in our lawyer as well so that we can mitigate the conflict of interest. And we now have some loan docs that the committee is looking at. And we will be contracting with Region 9 on monitoring the loan, providing that initial lien and those loan documents, facilitating repayment, all of that. And they are doing it, they're doing their percentage in the spirit that the RHA is doing it at and only asking for 0.25. So we ask for 1.75% for interest, which covers our processing and agreements, and they're going to be taking 0.25% of that. So we're able to keep it very low for these construction loans. We're getting very close to making those distributions. We had some shifts happen that we'll speak to here in a minute under the decision items for the town of Ignacio, but we also were given a little more time on the Pine River Commons project as they bought themselves a couple of another month basically. And so everybody still wants this to happen as quickly as possible, but nobody has had a project drop because of this, so that's good news. Any questions about the loan fund?
So the loan fund uses the Durango Industrial Development Foundation money. Okay, correct. Okay. Back on the Catalyst Fund, can I just say one thing?
Sure.
I wonder if on our retreat, we could look at, I don't know what's gonna come forth from the steer committee other than lodger's tax reallocation. But I have always believed, maybe I'm Pollyanna, that if we ask our community for money, they, especially now that there's a track record, I mean, we might, until there's a more sustainable source of funding, we may be able to get some philanthropy or donors or something. So maybe put that on the list. Like, I think, I mean, I'm being Pollyanna here. I think we could raise $500,000 pretty relatively quickly, given the need of housing in our community.
We're actually in the same boat because that's one of the things that I've been working with Louise on is trying to create some marketing communications around the Catalyst Fund so that we can now go to some foundations and try to start asking for some private asks. So we're at a point now where we have monitored 3 rounds, we've distributed 3 rounds, we have those success metrics. So we feel like we're at a place now that we can start pursuing some private dollars.
Okay, thanks.
No way, man. You know, I think that's a great idea. Is there some way to go ahead and set up some kind of a goal tracker for that? like we'll figure out a plan, you know, the next few months and then maybe set up some goals because we are gonna be running out of money. So
So we could add that to the goal track.
Goal tracker, the capital campaign for the catalyst fund, if you will.
Sure.
As we get that together, we will definitely include that. And if I could just say on that, I should have added steer committee to this as well. The steer task group will be meeting towards the end of the month to make they'll have 5 to 7 recommendations that they will then make to the steer committee. And the steer committee will come to the board with 3 to 5 recommendations, some of them short-term and long-term. And the timeline for that is we're hoping by the August meeting, at the latest, the September meeting, them coming to the RHA board to make those recommendations.
Is there a November question potentially?
Not outside of the.
Just say if there is,
We don't-
No.
make sure that comes in sooner.
No, I think the steer committee, rightly so, felt rushed on the discussion with lodger's tax reallocation at the county level. And I don't want to do anything like that again with them. This takes some thought, some not only brain power, but also just understanding community members and their capacity and their focus. And so I want them to be very well informed, and I want them to be methodical about their approach. Because this is, you know, this is really, really important, and we can't afford to screw it up, you know, and they're gonna be great thought process in it, I think. And then we're gonna have to have a robust discussion on it, because this is not only affects everybody in Lopata County, and it will, but it will make a difference. And so we just need to be very smart about how we do this. So that was a really good segue into goals tracker, I think.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, our goals tracking on page 17. Not a lot to report in terms of change from last month. We are working on the housing needs assessment with root policy. So they are on track for an end of the year housing needs assessment. There's just a lot of not exciting stuff right now, so more of those just kind of logistics and sausage making, if you will. So nothing to report at this time, but we hope to maybe have some progress and for them to be reporting to the RHA board at either the August meeting or again, the September one at the latest. You know, we really can't conduct updated polling because the technical assistance budget was already used up by the last activities with it. So we're at a point now where we don't have a budget left for the steer committee outside of this new grant that is providing expanded services. So yeah, we're not going to be able to conduct polling. However, as I mentioned to you all before, on the childcare side, they are able to do polling because they do have funding around that. So there will be some integration, and we've seen the municipalities and jurisdictions in the area conducting polling around this too. So I don't know that it's going to be a huge loss for us to not be able to conduct that from the RHA. And there is survey fatigue that is prevalent. So, you know, I think we can integrate into some of our other work, any pressing questions. And I know the housing needs assessment is going to be providing some of that same base work that we were talking about with polling.
What are we polling on?
We had talked about polling specific to the steer committee.
Steer, yeah.
For a tax situation.
We do, I should check this out with Chuck and possibly our fellow commissioners. I don't want to offer something that we can't, but we poll every year. And so if there's something, and housing is a priority for us, so I see a huge nexus. And we just budget that, because we also ask like county going in wrong direction, right direction kind of stuff, you know, and what's going on in all the districts, the 3 districts, but there could be a way that we add some housing questions onto that. And that starts like February. Do you remember, Kevin? I think it's like February because we get it for our April board retreat. So that would be like February of 25. And if we needed to ask, you know, we don't ask that many questions, but maybe 2 or 3
Okay,
questions.
I'd just say it is a best practice if you're planning to go to election, because elections are expensive.
Yes.
Polling to see what the
Right.
things are trending, because you don't wanna fund an election that's a stinker.
That's
Not-
right.
Not that this would be the case here, but I know the city has done many polls prior to elections in the past.
I believe based on what the steer committee ends up recommending to this board and what the board determines they want to pursue in a sustainable funding source, that would be the basis for 1 to 2 polling questions after that.
And as long as we're doing basic citizen, as long as it's not an advocacy poll,
Right.
since we're using taxpayer money, but if we're trying to gauge certain, like, what do people think about paying this for this? What do, you know, would you prefer this kind of tax or this kind of tax? We do that, so.
Yes. Other than that, we've been on track with all the ongoing goals. They are in progress. We have been making progress on them. So if there's any specific questions about any of the goals, I'm here for it.
Number 5, RHA concert reminder and flyers, there's one.
Yeah, so you all have a flyer for our upcoming concert on Wednesday, July 31st. Powerhouse tickets are $12.50 if you buy them ahead of time. I think at the door they are $20. Proceeds will go to the RHA. Spread the word. I'm happy to send out. We will be doing some social media blasts with the flyers, with the links to buy tickets and all of that. Yeah, spread the word. Invite all your friends. It should be really great.
Questions? Okay, we're on to decision items. 1, amendment to the IGA funding agreement.
This was what the board tasked us to do with David Lieberman to update the IGA agreement. We looked at several mechanisms for understanding how we could do an escalation, and we ended up landing on the consumer price index from the state of Colorado. So he has updated the IGA to include that as our indicator for what we need to utilize for escalation. So for instance, the current CPI is at, okay, too many windows open, hold please. It's not the right one. Apologize. It's at 2 something percent, so I'm just trying to find it for sure. It's at 2.6% over the year currently. So what we would do in this moment of time, if the board agrees to it, is we would have that be our escalator for next year. And a reminder, last year we had an arbitrary 27% increase that was a carryover in our accounting records. So this is obviously substantially smaller and I think probably easier to absorb by all jurisdictions. But that's where we're at. IGA.
I don't have any concerns with, this is exactly what we talked about back in December, I think it was. But from a procedural standpoint, I think what needs to happen is the board maybe says, yeah, we like this, but then I gotta take this back because it's gonna go through the commission, the Board of County Commissioners to approve, and which means it goes through our vetting process. Our attorneys will have to look at it. So in terms of us acting on this today, I guess it would be board desired to move this forward, but it really wouldn't be official until all of the entities took their own action on executing it.
That is correct. And that is one of the reasons we stalled to make sure that we got everything correct in this agreement, because it is not easy to redo. And because the agreement that we're currently under is locked in. So we have no escalator right now in our IGA. But this would require the board to approve it and every jurisdiction to go back and get it approved. And then from that point forward, it would be official that the IGA is fully funded and executed.
Do we know what, obviously the data's out there, but do you know what the CPI looks like over the last 5 years on an annual basis? I mean, does it pretty much stay in this neighborhood?
It stays in the neighborhood. It had a pretty significant jump in the past couple of years, but it typically doesn't jump quite that much.
I don't think the last 5 years is really a good.
Yeah, well,
The point is, should there be a not to exceed a certain percentage?
well,
Something to that effect, is what if it jumps to 8?
it was at 9% in
9%.
2022.
And I don't know if that's a necessity on an annual basis to go from 2.6 to 9, down to 3, up to 12.
Well, I guess my opinion is, you know, the last 4 years or so have been quite the anomaly in our lifetime. And usually we haven't seen significant pops like that. We've seen increases where interest rates, you know, let's face it, mortgage rates got up to 18%, you know, in late 70s. So it can happen. But I think putting a cap on it is unrealistic, given that if there is that kind of cost increase, there's that kind of cost increase for this board. So, you know, that's the cost of doing business.
And I suspect that the questions I just posed will be ones I'll hear from our folks back at the county. So just putting it out there.
Yes, I'll have to do the same thing just to our friend. So what I would need, and I'm sure that you have, because I don't have numbers, but what our current rate is, and what it would be
this project specifically to take on indebtedness for this project. They are not looking at creating a rival RHA or anything like that. They are very specific in their mission for this, but we would need to adjust the board's recommendation of funding the town of Ignacio to the town of Ignacio's housing authority. And their housing authority is still being established, and so it's delicate timing. That's why we asked to put this on the agenda today. So if the board approves this, we will be able to fund them as soon as the housing authority is established.
You wanna elaborate?
Sure. Yeah, this project really has been a educational process, learning what we can and can't do. You know, municipalities have never really been out in front of developments like housing developments. They've been in front of community centers and things like that, rec centers, but housing's a whole different animal, and there's actually state statute that makes it even more difficult. The ability to approve town boards to approve annual appropriations for lease purchase type agreements is not allowed for housing. So it's 3 words, except for housing, and we need to remove that from the statute next year. So in our work on this, that became a problem. We've looked at a number of different things, and the easiest is to form a housing authority, as Sarah mentioned. It's a single jurisdiction housing authority. This regional housing authority is established different and has to fall under Tober, where a single jurisdiction housing authority does not. So the town board approved on Monday. The process and work needed to establish single jurisdiction authority. It's very easy. You need a petition with 25 signatures of eligible voters in the town, have a public hearing, and the board pass a resolution. So the town board of Ignacio is committed to move this forward. In working with Sarah for the revolving loan fund criteria, and simultaneously we're working with First Southwest Bank on our construction financing. Their questions are, well, we need to lien the property, and that becomes a deed of trust, and statute is really cloudy on all of that, are prohibitive. But this housing authority gives us a totally different mechanism. It'll operate under the umbrella of the town. The town board will be the board of the housing authority, and for now, as Sarah mentioned, that's our main focus, is to get our Rock Creek project completed. Is there an opportunity in the future to work with rentals or other things that may rear their head in Ignacio? Maybe so. In talking with Sarah on this and her desire to get the funds out to the 2 recipients as soon as possible, and with us on a fast track to get this housing authority established, we thought it'd be prudent to bring that in front of you to see if you would approve basically the change in names on funding requests. Same project. Nothing's really changed other than the town of Ignacio is no longer, it's the Ignacio Housing Authority. So, did you leave anything out?
Questions,
I
concerns?
have one question. Do I need to recuse myself from that? Or something?
Yes, you do. No, you don't have to leave the room. It's your choice. Thoughts, questions? Couple things. Mark and Craig, or I really commend you guys for quick thinking and creative thinking to address this issue. Hoops you guys have to deal with is it's ridiculous, but that's another issue. But good quick thinking is, the other question is the Southern Utah Housing Authority able to help out or involved at all?
We did not reach out to them, and I don't know if they can help out, to be honest with you.
Just so everybody knows, that the Southern Utah tribe does have its own housing authority. Most Southern Utah members cannot take advantage of their housing because their income is too high. They don't hit the thresholds. there are a lot of southern youths that don't meet the blood quantum, that don't get the distributions, and therefore need housing as well as other natives in the area that we're in Ignacio. So just so everybody's clear, that, you know, there's another authority, and they do good work, but you know, they're focused at the federal level, which is probably even more different than the state stuff. So anyhow, go
Yeah,
ahead.
just to follow on your comments there, appreciate it. Mayor Craig and I presented at the Colorado Municipal League Annual Conference on our project with SCH, our engineering and planning firm. Went well. We had a lot of questions. You know, communities are, what are you doing? How are you doing this? So it went well, but we're still in this learning process. The end of the tunnel is, I see the light, and we're moving forward. The town board has been very supportive and gracious, keeping this moving when we don't have all our I's dotted and T's crossed on financing, but we're getting close. And our local institutions such as the RHA with this revolving loan fund and First Southwest Bank have been very supportive of our project. And that will segue into that agenda item that comes up on land trusts. So thank you.
Katie?
So, you know, I think a good point for Ignacio, but I think that, you know, our legislation was not considered set up for local government to manage housing. And we got a long ways to go to have them understand that that is probably our biggest barrier in doing housing. You know, public good is, you know, we thought about transportation, utilities and things like that, but we're getting to a point where we really gotta have our Congress and senators understand that they've got to make some real changes in our state statutes, because we're really stuck into trying to wheedle our way through the statutory, you know, requirements, and then we find these roadblocks that never anticipated.
Chair, if I could add if I could add to Katie's statement about the fact that our Prop 123 funding is following the cities, though, is following municipalities, and we couldn't apply for it as a housing authority. So it's, yeah. So that's what our hope, that's why the town of Ignacio had to apply for this capacity building grant, because we were unable to.
Save us from ourselves.
You know, I mean, actually for our two lobbying organizations, CCI, the deadline is tomorrow to submit any legislation. Although I think if something was super compelling, we could probably push that. But we have another lobbying organization that works much more on housing. We have a retreat in August. I'd be happy if there's like a piece of legislation that's like, let's fix this one thing. Those are sometimes, I know they sound so easy, and then like getting them through the legislature, but if anybody has ideas, this is the time, because we're cooking what the legislation is gonna be for 25. So like RHA should be able to do pretty much anything within ethical boundaries.
Right, yeah, I mean, to be able to apply to all the funding mechanisms that the state has for housing would be ideal.
And we couldn't apply for 1, 2, 3.
Well, not for this particular stream, this capacity building, which is what we need, capacity building at the RHA.
Can we hire Eva?
Second that.
Probably. Yeah, there's the political aspect. And I'm not against it at all, but
Well, you can just go off of what was written during your herald. It's gospel.
I'm not gonna touch that. Let's go on. All right, is there any action that we actually have to take on this topic?
Yes,
I would make a motion to, I don't know how you wanna word it, the Ignacio Housing Authority name would be replaced with the town of Ignacio. It's
other way around.
asked that the town of Ignacio be replaced with the Ignacio Housing Authority.
That's it.
On what,
Decision item number 2.
Number H2.
With regard to the fund and what they we've allocated through that fund to the town. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Recused.
Aye.
Aye. Staying.
You guys get that?
Mark abstaining, okay.
Whatever you wanna call it, not voting.
I would recuse, because abstention doesn't prohibit you from being prosecuted from the vote.
Okay.
Recusal.
And Mark, will you be abstaining or recusing?
Recusing.
Staying.
No, you meant, but recusing.
I'll leave it at that, okay. Good.
You meant to
Next item is the October RHA meeting date.
Okay.
You have a meeting date conflict in October.
We do, the RHA board, a number of board members will be at the Housing Colorado conference, presenting actually on the work that the RHA has done. So Pat, Mark, myself and Nicole Killian will be presenting at the Housing Colorado conference on our public-private partnerships that we've leveraged to get the RHA back up and running, and things like the Catalyst Fund and the Revolving Loan Fund will be a part of that conversation. However, we will be at that conference at the same time of this, at the same time of the meeting. So we are proposing that we skip the month of October.
Good.
Everybody okay with that?
Yep, I would.
Any motion needed?
I don't think so.
When are we gonna reschedule that? We had a retreat in October last year. Do you wanna just make it a retreat month?
Yeah, sure.
Well, you all
Although-
talked about having an executive session instead of a retreat.
Yeah, and we need to have it sooner than October for
Yeah.
everybody to get session. Good. Discussion items, updates, grant matrix. Sarah? Tertiary.
We didn't really have any updates, this month. The only things I'm really looking for are, cause I know we wanted to start putting the amount awarded, in total, like to be awarded and awarded to date, and so I'm just hoping that a couple of these yellow squares on page 25 of your packet and 26, if you have the numbers for what will be awarded, what has been, as well as any updates, but that is where, we did talk about putting a loan category in the grants tracker.
So isn't it amount awarded and then amount received?
Well, that's where we kept getting a little weird with language, so we changed, I thought, them both to awarded and one was awarded to date, as opposed to awarded in total, but if you would like, we can change it to received.
I like received.
Well, the challenge for having this town document, people were questioning where's that money, even though we haven't received it. Because it's passed through reimbursement. So that was the challenge that we were taking.
Yeah, it was award, I mean, awarded doesn't mean you have it. I'd almost like to see amount received to date would be better in that.
Yeah.
That column versus awarded, because we've already been awarded $2 million.
We'll make that adjustment.
It feels like we're going back to what we asked you to adjust.
We've gone back and forth a couple times.
That's what I don't understand. I
We
mean,
didn't have an amount awarded before, we just had received.
we had received.
So we have two categories.
Yeah,
was the
Harold kept calling us about our $2 million.
So we will leave amount to be heard.
Amount
Amount received.
on that second column.
Yes, and the other one will be amount to be awarded and then amount received. Okay, correct. And then if we do want to, the board would like to see a loan category on here, I'm happy to add that. We just haven't had any. To put into the grant tracker, but we can add that as well.
I would suggest we add that.
if we did add that, the town of Ignacio wouldn't technically have received the loan though. So are we still gonna report that under Ignacio, even though it'll be their housing authority?
I think National Housing.
It's just, I guess just as housing authority.
I think we all know, I think the more stuff that we have in here,
I
showing the public what we're doing is
agree. I
good.
I agree.
And if it's a nuance there, I'm fine with the nuance. Personally. Yep. Alright, anything else on the grant matrix?
Well, under this item, I just want to read this statute real quick to you, so you, as you know, we have these hurdles to jump through. It's in statute 3115-801. 31 is a municipal statute section. It says agreements, ordinances, financing. In order to provide necessary land, buildings, equipment, and other property for governmental or proprietary purposes or for financing of forest health products as defined in section 3795-103, any municipality is authorized to enter into long-term rental or leasehold agreements. But in no event shall this be construed as authorizing the use of any municipality of leasehold agreements to finance residential housing. So that's the one that,
So what about hotel housing?
anyhow, that's the statute. Marsha, I'll get you we just need to remove.
Maybe
That last portion.
Good as an Airbnb.
Yeah.
So it's an easy topic.
Well, they could tax it.
Yeah, if you could, because I think if it's, yeah, let's run
Okay,
it through.
sorry, I got us off. Next item is Prop 123 updates.
So don't have many other than I will be going to the statewide Durango Southwest Colorado Stakeholder Outreach and Engagement, which is being put on by Housing Colorado, CHAPA, and OEDIT, and DOLA. And that will be at Fort Lewis from 9 to 3. Marsha passed it along. And so that
It's
will
July, what?
July 29th.
It's
Monday,
open for registration to anyone who wants to go.
and it's free, and they do feed you lunch.
Can you send,
Set that out. I
Can you
think
send that
over
in?
this spring.
We can send it.
I'd like to.
okay,
Can send it to the board.
Make sure that it gets out to everybody.
Just as a reminder, I think you guys know that the fund continues to be oversubscribed. Last count was 10 to 1. And again, I'm being a dead horse here, but you don't have skin in the game, you can get put to the bottom of the list. So funding source, we're trailing everybody else. Legislative updates. BoCC Rogers tax reallocation.
yeah, we had a meeting on Tuesday, a business meeting that we approved sending the county clerk a letter with an intent to put the lodgers tax reallocation on this year's ballot. The next step is, and I wasn't checking my email, I was looking at my calendar, I think it's the 25th. Just 1 second, so we're having a work session next. Because now that we and the reason to send the clerk a letter, you guys have probably already been through this before. I see ya. Is that it's so the clerk starts to know what's gonna be on the ballot. It isn't a final decision. So we're having a work session this month. I think it's the 25th. Before I get done, I'll let you know. And that's gonna be a time that we delve into the percentage allocation. So we currently collect about $1 million a year, and we can reallocate up to 90% of it. And the purpose is to enhance visitors' experience, which can cover childcare and housing. So we need to figure out the percentage, and we have some homework to do in various areas to figure that out. The way that, I think I've said this before, the way our lodgers tax works now by law, unless you reallocate it, all of it goes to an entity that a panel that we appoint designates to a marketing entity. Currently, that is Visit Durango. So we need to figure out the percentage. And then we need to figure out what the ballot language would be, and that's what we're having a work session on. And then after that, we'll have another business meeting where it will be on an agenda for a decision. I have to say it was one of the most amazing meetings I have been at in a long time. We had the childcare community showing up in force talking. And we also had Pat there and Logan from the steer committee. Sarah was there, thank you. Really talking about how particularly childcare, just because the people that were there, but also housing impacts our tourism workforce and our workforce in general. So pretty compelling, testimony given. We'll have all of that in our packet and it's online if anybody wants to listen.
Marsha, question on the work session, is the public allowed to ask questions and interact?
No, not for work sessions. They're more where we deliberate, and I apologize. Let me see. I think it's the 25th. Just a second. Kevin, you don't remember, do you? Okay, I'll get it out to everybody. I thought I had it on my calendar. No, but if you have questions for me, you can email them ahead of time and I'll ask. So, $1 million, if we allocated, let's say 75%, that'd be $750 a year. And it's not gonna solve all the problems, as we've said, but the steer committee, I think, made, in my mind, a good case for operating funding and or catalyst funding. One of the things that we've talked about already is not constricting it too much. If we can keep it broad, both for, so maybe 1 year, if this would go through, goes on the ballot and would pass 1 year, there might be a really compelling grant out there for X. So we want to make sure we're not constricting it too much in the way the ballot is.
When I spoke, I really talked about this as kind of seed capital for the RHA, and just kind of the tip of the iceberg for what we look at for a funding source. So, and I did, you've heard me say this before, but I did use the example of, what would it look like to the general public if the RHA had refused a donation of entitled buildable land because we couldn't afford the holding costs. I use that as an example because that may be a real possibility that faces us in the future if we're going to have some sort of capital source, and that'd be a tragedy in my opinion. So, anyway, I will echo Marsha's comments. The child care group was out in force, not only in the room, but online as well. But there was kind of a mutual acknowledgement of housing and childcare together as an overall burdensome issue, if not a glaring problem.
Can I give another update?
Sure.
This will make Mike very happy. He's kind of got my brain going a couple of years ago. Maybe it wasn't exactly your idea, but the La Plata County, we're currently in the legislative brewing process, as I said. We are gonna put forth an idea to our lobbying group to allow us to raise the lodger's tax. And we currently are capped by law at 2% and municipalities are not. And it would be permissive, and so it would be a bill that says if counties want to vote, so it wouldn't be like raising it statewide, you still have to vote, but we're capped at 2%. And so that's where, we get in this kind of tussle between tourism, marketing, and housing and childcare. We want it raised to where we could go up to 6%. So we have a lot of stakeholding to do, just starting those conversations, but we are really focusing to make it bipartisan. And so it's not just certain kinds of counties that want this. And we've gotten some support from our neighbors so far, at least talking to individual commissioners. So I'm psyched about that. And so that we'll be talking about, hopefully if we can get it through CCI, the 65% threshold, it will be a bill that CCI runs. So pretty psyched about that. And haven't let go of the idea of excise on STRs. That's also being talked about, so.
Okay, so would that be raising the threshold of the lodger's tax? Would be like taking away from tax?
In the county, since we are animals of the state and municipalities aren't, we are capped at, so they say you can't rate, you can only collect 2% on lodgers. We want it to be up to 6%. And then we would have to go to a vote of everybody in the county. But it wouldn't affect the city. Yeah, it wouldn't affect any municipality. But we could say then, and we're trying to figure out how it would work, like, would you have to have 2 votes, 1 to raise it and then 1 to allocate to housing? Or could you do that in 1 vote? We're not sure on that yet. But like, wouldn't it be great, I'm speaking as one commissioner, if we could go to vote, separate from what might happen this fall, if we could go to vote for an extra that would, you know, develop a better partnership with marketing and destination management and housing and childcare.
I'd also like to make it clear when I spoke in front of the commissioners, I made it clear that we understand that tourism is a huge economic driver in the community. And that we're not trying to rob Peter to pay Paul here. You know, we recognize that this has to be a relationship that works. But I also reiterated it's hard to have employees in tourism if you can't afford to live here. Point well taken. And I'd like to say kudos to Marsha and Commissioner Salka because they have been champions of this effort in their separate lobbying entities at the counties at the state level. Good for you, Marsha. Mark Land Trust.
Yes, thank you. I'm sorry I read that statute. I thought we were actually on this agenda item, so sorry for getting ahead of that. I'm not in that big of a hurry to leave. I know we're ahead of schedule. So yeah. On the land trust discussion, fortunately Eva isn't here, but last month she had reported on work that the city's doing with Elevation Land Trust Meeting West on the Twin Buttes project, and we exchanged a few emails and texts trying to connect because I wanted to pick her brain what they were doing. And I did not have that conversation, unfortunately. Also, in April, both Sarahs, I think, were there, myself and others at the Colorado Mountain Housing Coalition's summit at Mount Princeton. And the Chafee Housing Trust presented their land trust model, which really seemed to fit well for our project. And so in discussions between sessions, Elizabeth Salkine had represented maybe Housing Solutions would be interested in taking a lead on that. And it's just something that I think we really need to delve into here. I did talk to Elizabeth about it. She's lukewarm on whether they have capacity there for housing, for a land trust. And so we're still working on it. I have a meeting next week with Elevation to see if this is something that they can help us with. I think it would work really well by taking the land out of the equation and having an organization that manages the resale of the units and the shared equity is built into that. So homeowners get their 25% of the equity in it, and the remainder of the equity buys the house price back down so future homeowners can afford the house as well. So it's an excellent model. I don't think we need to recreate the wheel. I've had discussions with the Chafee Housing Trust. They're jurisdictional or geographically constrained on what they can do, but it's not to say that we can't take their bylaws and everything else and recreate it here. And so I've had conversations with Sarah, because we don't have a functioning one in our area. Elevation's coming in from the Front Range. They're doing great work. I'm not trying to belittle anything they're doing, but maybe it's something that we need. And back to this capacity building equation that we were talking about, maybe this is another piece of the puzzle in trying to identify what the RHA is and what we do. And maybe it doesn't need to be just La Plata County centric. It could maybe reach it to Montezuma County, Archuleta County, because they don't have land trusts either that I'm aware of. And so maybe in a retreat or maybe at something at some point, we can maybe delve into this. Maybe it's a committee that we form amongst ourselves, so that might be interested. And like I said, we won't recreate the wheel, but we will use other trust bylaws to see how they pertain to needs here in our area. So I think it worked really well for our project and we're working on it. But time is of the essence, see if we pull it off. But I think as a regional housing authority, this might be something that we really want to move up the ladder here. We've talked about it, but it really hasn't come to fruition.
I think that brings up a bigger topic, and we touched upon it, is the capacity building, is having the appropriate staff to be able to structure a robust discussion and an informed discussion. Because I'll tell you, I have this much knowledge on land trust, and as I stated in the last meeting, I have this much knowledge on deed restrictions. And those are two tools in the toolbox that I mean, kind of embarrassed. I'm supposed to be chair of the RHA, and I have no clue what those two elements are. I know what they are, but I don't know how they really work, and what are the advantages and what are the pitfalls. I mean, I really entertain an open discussion on those type of items, so you can really understand, what works and what doesn't, or what happens when interest rates go up, or there's a recession and you have to sell your unit, all kinds of stuff. So I think if we were able to get the capacity, that's part of the budget process, get the capacity on board, and then really have a very good informed discussion, and not just a topical thing, would be helpful for me personally.
Maybe a step moving forward, I did reach out to Jen Lopez based on Sarah's suggestion. You know how busy she is. But maybe in our capacity building grant, we could use some funds to bring Jen in, or professionals that can educate us on the land trust models, and we have a good informed discussion on it. I certainly don't want to create more work for our staff, but
I understand. That's good. That's very good.
The board has also asked for a deed restriction deep dive, so it may be this educational series.
Yeah.
Great. Anything else on the land trust?
Not related to the previous agenda item, Cat Braille in the chat asked, is the work session confirmed for the 25th?
I just texted our county manager because I didn't come through to my work phone, so
Gotcha, okay.
I will,
It should be on the county's website though, shouldn't it?
not yet, yeah, maybe so, I'll look.
I wrote down the 26th, that was. said in the
26th, okay,
meeting.
it's just not showing up on my phone yet, which sometimes is an issue.
Marsha, it's not the joint study session, right?
No, it's not the city, county, it's our own lodgers tax work session. You wrote down the 26th?
Yep, that's what Commissioner Salka said.
Oh, it is, I'm sorry, it did show up on my phone. Okay, now I like technology again. It's from 10 to noon. And that will be at 11:01 East 2nd. Same room, the commissioner's room. Something on the land banking, I kind of see this, first of all, great idea, Mark, about regional. And I see it as what Mike said earlier about maybe in our strategic planning session, we start setting milestones like we've already done. Like, we think we could get a land trust off the ground in X year, like work back. Because we've always said we needed to exist to provide the toolkit. So we're doing grant tracking, we're doing the catalyst fund, we're doing the revolving loan fund, we're doing, technical assistance. So I think it's a great tool. I am with you. I only know, we know a little bit about it just from dealing with elevation. But I maybe we can just really say, okay, do we want to do that? And then what would it take? And what do we need to know about it? Because it's a capacity builder big time. I mean, West Side never would have happened without elevation.
Yeah.
There's no way.
And that'll be my first question, Elevation. Can you support us, and how does that look? And maybe they open a branch over here. Maybe it's something that they do for us, but we don't have to delve into it. But maybe they're limited in capacity and don't have the ability to work in our region. So it puts the onus on us.
Well, and your point about Jen, I mean, she certainly has connections beyond elevation that you might be able to utilize this if you're not satisfied with what you hear. So she's very welcome.
I just got a text, just because I know people are paying attention, we may need to change that date. So I will make sure it goes out to the RHA board. If anybody's listening in, they can always email me or email you, Sarah, to find out the date. So apologies for that, we're getting our calendars all coordinated. For the work session on lodger's tax that the county is doing, yeah. And we will have a recording if you can't make it. You guys can already read.
Okay, on to member updates. I don't have any updates since we talked about the county commissioner discussion, so, town of Ignacio, any further updates? Town of Bayfield.
So, I attended the, Western Slope, managers meeting, yesterday. And they gave us a tour of the emergency, the community emergency. I don't have probably enough.
Sure, go ahead.
Wow. What I was really impressed with is that, like, this Delta has a Abraham house and, what I thought was really interesting about this project is that, the thing that I've been asking for quite a while, when we had, the ARPA funds and we hired a person to get a map of where everything is, of all the resources for, homeless. Now granted, the RHA does not do homeless and I'm not, asking that. But what I thought was really interesting is that, wouldn't it be nice to have like housing resources and where those are located at? Whether it's for the, 60 to 80% AMI or the 80 to 120% AMI. Or, when you're really talking about homeless, where all those resources are. I mean, even in my own capacity here in Bayfield, I'm still trying to figure out where everything is and, who to contact or who to send people to. So the town actually received, we have a philanthropist that has given the town $50,000. We're giving $10,000 out. $20,000 will be up for our board on Tuesday, and then another $20,000 we'd like to do some rehabilitation for housing for veterans. Because we really think that's an important piece of our community that, hot water heater, windows, maybe insulation, maybe skirting around a mobile home, all those things we could do. So I just thought this was really interesting. What I was kind of concerned about, it'd just be another shelter, and it's really not a shelter, it's really a resource center, and that's why they call it a resource center. So when I was there yesterday, I did tell them that I would pass this on to the RHA. And that if you're ever interested, I have contact information for Chris Masters, who is with United Way, and they'd be more than happy to give you a tour and basically give you all the information. So we toured the showers, we toured the restrooms, we were inside, we felt, safe as there. And certainly what I thought was really interesting is talking about, the shelter, Roycehurst, and dealing with putting kennels in this resource area so that people could keep their animals with them and things like that. So I just thought it was just a really good tour. It's a lot more than a little more impressed than I thought it would be. So anyway, I thought I would just hand this out. I just kept grabbing all the materials I got. So, and I have more maps here too. Bayfield, we're having our block party today. And then we have one more block party on August 8th. I think that, Bayfield, we're still kind of going through some transition. We're definitely getting into our budget season right now, just like everybody else. And let's see how that goes. So we're hoping to have kind of a meeting with Patrick Rondinelli. He's going to do some work with how the board can work together. And I think that's going to be really good as we kind of move forward. There are it looks like we're going to have the Republicans are gonna clash in Bayfield on the 19th. I'm hearing a lot of, there's two different camps, I should say, in the Republican Party. I don't know much about it, but I'm being warned a couple times that there's gonna be real issues. Something about, two different parties or two different camps, I should say, that, are not happy with each other. So I've been told all the Republican Party, rules, and that's not my jurisdiction. I have no idea, and that's not what I'm gonna do. Our goal is to protect our park and our town hall on the 19th, so anyway.
Why the 19th?
That's when they all decided to converge.
It's nice they gave you a warning.
There's reasons for it, but probably not appropriate for the RHA. I'd be happy
And
to fill you
it
in
is
the
not.
details.
So it's the 19th of July?
It's a trigger, it's a trigger. The 19th is the date that it has to occur by.
I see.
For the meeting.
And I don't
It's just a
understand that. Let's see, what else is going on? We have a park committee that is working on, basically as a citizen group. We're gonna kind of let them go, kind of work on, their citizen part so they kind of understand where we have spent really the last 6 years of putting together the needs of Joe Stevenson Park. I think a goal is for them to catch up to where I think staff is right now. I think sometimes we forget we know too much, and now let them do that. So really have some good committees that are coming out of the new council as well.
Thank you. City of Durango.
Well, I guess the biggest, since we got done fighting with the youths, now we hired Mike to help us with the house. It was an unfortunate incident that happened there. Eva resigned. We were able to retain Mike to use his hand for this ordeal. The other things in the city is try to reorganize a lot of different things. We are moving forward with 2005 reauthorization for the 9R building to be converted into City Hall PD. You could keep in mind that we no longer are associating that City Hall PD with Civic Center anymore. It's just PD, Civic Hall. And we're working on the plans down there for parking, realignment with some of the roads about 13th, 14th, 2nd Avenue. So there's gonna be some changes. It's not all gonna happen really quickly, but working problem. And other than that, I think things are moving smoothly. We're still in the budget, going through the budget process. And that's about all.
Yeah. So I am an interim board member. Hopefully that's not long term. Somebody more competent can come as chair. My job as a contractor to the city is really to provide help and be of service to people that are there. There's no way I can basically start there. And I recognize that, and my attempt is not to do so. It's simply to provide high level structure and support for that team, and we likely will need a resource to do so. My job also is to provide some structure for tourism, and it's interesting timing. And I also, as you guys know, have really strong opinions about nexus between housing and tourism. And so it's kind of an interesting position to really create that nexus and really carry out that vision through structure, and then see how it actually creates in terms of policy. So I'm happy to be here, but I want to make sure that I set proper expectations on my role, responsibilities, what I can.
Personally, I can't think of a better person at this point in time to be in that position, so thanks, Mike, for taking that.
Agreed.
The only other thing I have is, two things. One is that, we have been promising that when our community development department got fully staffed and revved up and ready to go, Lynn has been here just about a year, Lynn Hine, that we would start working on affordable housing code, and so we started it last week. So, the planning commission, will be looking at ideas. We have all kinds of ideas. If anybody wants to watch the recording, I can give you the timestamp on it. She presented to us last week. But we have ideas that have come out of a retreat that you were a part of, Pat, even a couple of years ago. We want to make sure we're melding with anything the RHA is thinking about and talking. We have fees that we need to waive, certain fees that we put in place that we need to waive if it's an affordable housing project. And just stuff like concentrating density, where's the water gonna go, you know, lots of that kind of stuff. So I'm really excited that we can finally say that it's not just something we need to do and we're fully working on it. The other thing is this month, I think in August, we will be taking up the issue of road impact fees. We've been doing community outreach. We are one of, I think, only 4 counties in the state that don't have a road impact fee. But again, this is one of the areas where if it's an affordable housing project, we'll need to look at that. And our road budget, I think, is very well known for being in the hole. And so road impact fees would raise roughly $500,000 a year, and we need like 10 million a year. So it's not gonna be what it needs to be, but you will have an opportunity if anybody wants to comment on that. So those are the 2 things.
Anything else to come forward?
If you didn't sign the paper for Eva, if you could, and I'll make sure that through folks here, I'll get her card.
Thank you. News.
Thank you, everybody.
I owe you 2.
This is a day.
I owe you $1.
Sheriff. So,
Which Jerry's on?
Yeah.
You don't know how to do this. I used to do this.